I still can't quite wrap my head around the sound a watermelon makes when it detonates on someone's forehead. It's not a splat, not a thud. It's this bizarre, hollow thonk followed by a wet, sugary explosion. And trust me, that was the very last thing Karen heard before the boys in blue rolled her away in cuffs. You absolutely have to stick around for this one, because it's got everything. Security cam proof, a real-life Navy SEAL, that's me by the way, and a public meltdown so spectacular, so utterly instant, that the entire produce section actually gave a standing ovation. Yeah, you heard that right. A standing ovation that IT was just another Thursday afternoon, the kind where the sun's a little too bright and your to-do list feels a mile long. I just slipped out of the house for a quick grocery run. Nothing fancy, just the essentials. Apples, some decent oatmeal, and one of those glorious rotisserie chickens that always smells better than it tastes. But hey, it's dinner in a pinch. I'm Dennis, by the way. 6'1", usually rocking a hoodie, and yeah, I did 12 years as a SEAL before I figured out that navigating a crowded supermarket on a weekday afternoon could be scarier than Fallujah. Seriously, the sheer unpredictability. The store was packed, buzzing with the low hum of fluorescent lights, like 1,000 agitated, cheap bees trapped in glass. Every aisle was a miniature traffic jam of oversized strollers, people staring blankly at cereal boxes, and coupon junkies meticulously comparing prices. I swear, the self-checkout corral is my sanctuary. 8 items, 0 patience. That's my motto. I just want to scan, pay, and get out before my inner peace is completely shattered. I was mid-scan, wrestling a particularly stubborn barcode on a bag of organic granola, when the sighing started. The lady behind me, classic blonde bob, the kind of severe haircut that screams, "I'd like to speak to your manager right now," had designer sunglasses perched indoors, like she was expecting paparazzi to jump out from behind the organic kale. First, it was a soft sigh, barely audible. Then it escalated, loud enough to probably fog the barcode scanner if I wasn't careful. I ignored it. Ignoring nonsense, I've learned, is about 80% of adulthood. It's a survival skill, really. But then, she sighed again, this time with actual words, dripping with passive aggression. "Some of us," she huffed, her voice cutting through the ambient grocery store noise, "have places to be." I paused, polite, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. It was the kind of smile that, in another life, would have been followed by a swift, silent neutralization, the polite SEAL smile that says, "I could snap you like a glow stick without breaking a sweat, but I'm choosing grace today because, frankly, I'm tired." I kept scanning my granola, deliberately slow, savoring the moment. That's when she rolled her cart, a heavy, metal behemoth, right into my heel. Not an accident, mind you. There was intent there. She shoved it twice more, a deliberate, aggressive nudge, as if trying to physically propel me out of the way. My blood pressure remained steady, but a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of annoyance sparked within. "Excuse me," she snapped, her voice now a full-blown assault, sharp enough to cut through the muzak. "You're taking forever." "Forever?" "Lady, I was scanning bananas at light speed, practically a blur of efficiency. But apparently, that wasn't good enough for Queen Entitled." I turned, my expression as calm as still water, and in a voice that barely registered above a murmur, I told her, "There are 4 other registers open." I even gestured vaguely towards them with my head. It was a simple fact, irrefutable logic, but she didn't like facts. She liked volume. She liked drama. Her eyes narrowed behind those ridiculous indoor sunglasses, and she launched into a full-blown lecture about respect, about how people like me always clogged the lines, about how she was a busy mom, and I was obviously not, because, her words, not mine, mind you, "You're here alone on a weekday." Every single one of her sentences ended with that infuriating little uptalk question mark, the universal sound of privilege being challenged, of someone expecting immediate deference. It was like a siren blaring, announcing her arrival to everyone within earshot. And earshot they were. People started to stare. Phones, those ubiquitous extensions of modern humanity, began to emerge from pockets and purses, held at discreet but ready angles. A teenage cashier, wide-eyed and looking utterly overwhelmed, quickly radioed for backup, his voice crackling with alarm, as if we were a code-red situation in aisle 9, perhaps a rogue avocado or a spontaneous kombucha explosion. Karen, meanwhile, kept barking, her voice escalating with each unanswered demand. And I kept scanning, because the fastest, most effective way to enrage a bully, I've learned, is to deny them the reaction they so desperately crave. My rotisserie chicken, still warm and fragrant, slid onto the scanning plate. The machine chirped its approval. Karen, however, did not approve. Not one bit. Suddenly, she leaned past me, her body invading my personal space, and with a surprisingly strong grip, snatched my grocery divider. Before I could even register what was happening, she slammed it down on the conveyor belt, so hard it produced a sickening crack. "Move," she ordered, her face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. I didn't. I simply placed my chicken gently on the scale, making sure the weight registered correctly. The machine chirped again, a little digital victory. Her face got even redder. Now she was poking my shoulder. Not a gentle tap, not a polite prod. This was a series of sharp, aggressive jabs, nails first, digging into my bicep. Each poke was punctuated by a shrill, "Are you deaf? Are you going to move?" I looked down at her hand, then slowly, deliberately, met her gaze. I've had quieter firefights, believe me. I've faced down adversaries with less intensity in their eyes. My voice, low and steady, was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of years of training. "Touch me again," I warned, my eyes never leaving hers, "and we're gonna have a problem." A predatory grin spread across her face, as if she'd been waiting for that sentence her entire life. It was a challenge, a dare. She wound up, a theatrical motion, and slapped my chest with an open palm. It wasn't a powerful blow, more of a theatrical gesture, but it was a clear act of physical assault. The security cameras, perched high above, blinked their silent, unblinking eyes, recording everything. Just then, a manager, a harried-looking man with a perpetually worried expression, trotted over, his walkie-talkie crackling like static electricity. Karen, seizing her moment, immediately launched into a torrent of accusations. I had cut her off. She shrieked. I had threatened her. I was probably on welfare. Particularly nasty and baseless jab. The manager looked at me, still standing calm, arms at my sides, a picture of quiet restraint. Then at Karen, who was now beet red, spit bubbles forming at the corners of her mouth, a truly grotesque sight. He seemed to assess the situation in an instant, the sheer absurdity of her claims against my obvious composure. He addressed me first, his voice cautious. "Sir, would you like to step aside for a moment?" I shook my head. "Nope," I replied, my voice firm. "I just want to pay for my chicken and apples and go home." He turned to Karen, his voice becoming a little more assertive. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice." She screamed an "oh," so loud it echoed off the high ceilings, a primal shriek that seemed to physically rattle the air. The self-checkout robot mid-transaction froze, its digital display blinking erratically. The entire store hushed. A collective gasp, like someone had just pulled the emergency brake on reality itself. Every eye in that supermarket was on us, waiting for the next act. The silence, thick and heavy, lasted only a second. Then Karen's hands, fueled by pure, unadulterated rage, shot out toward my cart. With a furious grunt, she started yanking items out, tossing them onto the pristine tile floor with reckless abandon. My carefully selected apples, bright green and red, rolled like tiny, colorful grenades across the aisle. My packet of organic oatmeal, a healthy start to any day, ripped open, its flakes drifting like sad, beige confetti onto the polished floor. Then, with a triumphant sneer, she grabbed my rotisserie chicken, still in its plastic container. She held it aloft like a grotesque trophy, her eyes blazing with malice. "You don't need this," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're fat." "I'm not fat, not by a long shot. I'm built like the door she wishes she could open with her attitude, solid and unyielding." But I stayed quiet. I focused on my breathing, the way they taught us in BUD/S, slow, measured, 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out. It was a mental anchor, keeping me grounded amidst her escalating chaos. She wound back, her body coiling with a strange, almost athletic grace, and hurled the chicken down the aisle. It sailed through the air in a greasy, rotating arc, a projectile of poultry fury. It exploded on impact, hitting the floor with a wet, sickening smash. Greasy shards of skin and meat skittered across the polished tile, a disgusting, unappetizing mess. The smell, a potent combination of pepper, grease, and the undeniable stench of utter defeat, wafted over us, a culinary crime scene. Gasps erupted everywhere. Those cell phones, previously held discreetly, were now horizontal, recording in earnest. This was definitely about to hit TikTok, with a million laughing emojis and snarky captions. Karen, oblivious to the horrified reactions, folded her arms across her chest, a smug, triumphant smirk plastered on her face, as if she had just dunked the winning basket in a championship game. She looked around, expecting applause for her destructive display. And this, my friends, is where pure, unadulterated entitlement collides head-on with the cold, hard laws of physics. Karen, still basking in her perceived victory, stomped forward, clearly planning to shove my cart completely aside, probably to ram hers into my shins again. What she utterly failed to notice, however, was the shimmering, almost invisible puddle of chicken juice and grease her little tantrum had created. It glistened innocently on the tile, a silent harbinger of impending doom. Her left heel hit it, cartoon style, with an audible squish. Her arms immediately began to pinwheel wildly, a desperate, flailing attempt to regain balance that only accelerated her descent. Her eyes widened in a comical expression of surprise and horror. She flew backward, a blonde blur of fury and flailing limbs, crashing into the flimsy magazine rack with a loud clatter. Tabloids, with their sensational headlines and glossy images of celebrity scandals, cascaded down around her like a bizarre, papery avalanche. She landed flat on her back, sprawled beneath a pile of National Enquirers and gossip rags. In that moment, the National Enquirer truly saved the day, breaking her fall, however marginally. But the real piece de resistance? That cracked watermelon display, 3 tiers high, a precarious pyramid of ripe fruit, wobbled precariously from the impact. 1 melon, then 2, then the entire structure began to topple, a slow-motion cascade of green and striped spheres. The first fruit, a particularly large, round specimen, landed square on her forehead with that hollow thonk that echoed off the ceiling, a sound that would forever be etched in my memory. The second melon burst on her chest, a messy explosion of pink flesh and black seeds, painting her pristine white blouse like some tragic, impromptu ice cream challenge. She lay there, stunned, arms and legs splayed like a chalk outline, watermelon seeds decorating her blonde hair like demonic dandruff. Silence. Absolute, profound silence. Then, from the back of the store, someone clapped. A single, distinct clap. Another person whistled, a low, appreciative sound. And then, slowly, tentatively, applause began to spread, growing in volume and fervor until half the store was cheering, hooting, and whistling like the Avengers had just assembled to defeat a supervillain. It was glorious. The harried manager, bless his soul, rushed over and helped her up. She was a slippery mess, dripping with watermelon juice, sobbing uncontrollably. Her sunglasses had flown off, revealing eyes that were now wide with shock and humiliation, rather than anger. Security, 2 burly guys who looked like they'd seen it all, quickly escorted her to the back office. She kept screeching, her voice now a pathetic, watery wail, that she would sue everyone, the store, the manager, me, probably even the melons themselves. The cops showed up within 5 minutes. 2 deputies, looking remarkably calm, clearly veterans of many a produce-aisle prima donna incident. They walked in, surveyed the scene, the splattered chicken, the oatmeal, the watermelon carnage, the still applauding crowd, and immediately got to work. They interviewed me, reviewed the security footage, which, I later heard, was absolutely priceless. and spoke to a handful of eager witnesses. The uniform consensus was swift and undeniable. She had assaulted me, destroyed store property, and created a significant safety hazard. They cuffed her right there, between the fresh bananas and the breath mint shelf, the metallic click echoing through the still buzzing store. She was still yelling, high-pitched, indignant shriek about her rights, and how this was an outrage, as they marched her past the automatic doors. As those doors slid shut behind her, the applause revved up again, like an encore night at a rock concert. People cheered, high-fived, and some even started chanting, "Watermelon, watermelon." It was a truly cathartic moment for everyone present. The store employees, fantastic people they were, quickly sprang into action. They replaced my chicken with a fresh, undamaged one, refunded my apples, and even gave me a gift card big enough to cover my groceries for a month. Talk about customer service. As I was checking out, a young kid stocking yogurt, probably no older than 18, gave me a discreet fist bump and whispered, his eyes wide with admiration, "Dude, that was better than Marvel." I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh, probably the first real, unburdened laugh I'd had since leaving the service. The cell phone cameras slowly stopped rolling. The crowd dispersed, already buzzing with the story. I heard a few people discussing renaming the event Watermelon Wednesday in their group chats. It seemed my mundane grocery run had achieved legendary status. I rolled my cart outside, the sun beginning its slow descent behind the parking lot lamps, casting long, orange shadows. For the first time in a long while, it felt like entitlement hadn't won. The good guys, or at least the guy just trying to buy some chicken, hadn't finished last. And somewhere in a county lockup, Karen was probably demanding to speak to the jail's manager, still utterly baffled by the universe's refusal to bend to her will. If you've ever dealt with a rampaging Karen, or simply witnessed some truly epic instant karma, hit that like button so hard she feels it through the internet. And seriously, comment your wildest public meltdown story down below. The best one gets pinned. Let's share the burden, people. I drove home, the comforting aroma of rotisserie chicken filling the truck cab, my heart finally beating at a normal, steady rhythm. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced at it. A text from my mom. It was a link, accompanied by a single, incredulous question. "Is this you on WorldStar?" I pulled into my driveway, parked the truck, and clicked the link. Yep, it was me. And Karen. The video, titled something like "Grocery Store Karen Gets Watermelon" by ex-Navy SEAL, already had 2.3 million views. The top comment, with thousands of likes, simply read, "Navy SEAL versus Watermelon, call Hollywood." I chuckled, shaking my head, a genuine smile spreading across my face. I walked inside, the familiar scent of home a welcome embrace. My dog, a goofy golden retriever named Daisy, greeted me like I'd been gone a year, wagging her entire body with unbridled joy. I scratched her behind the ears, the soft for a comforting sensation. "Girl," I murmured, looking down at her adoring face. "Tomorrow we grill." Courtesy of Instant Karma. Subscribe for more real-life karma deliveries, because these stories are all around us. And remember, entitlement's a heavy thing. You drop it in the wrong place, and it'll squash you faster than a 5-pound melon. Stay vigilant out there, folks.